with you, Dr. Calist. Why? Because you sit in the Ministry of Water and Environment. And when we look around and see what we're going through with the heat, sometimes with the floods, and we see how the depletion of the resources, especially the forest cover, we worry. Really, are you overwhelmed?
Well, thank you very much again. Indeed, every Ugandan has been concerned about what is happening, and we need to worry, because these are things that have not happened in the past, and they're happening now. Obviously, we need to be concerned, and we need to reflect on why all of these are happening at this time. And of course, later on, we discuss deeper how these things are coming about and what we can do. But we need to worry as Ugandans, because these changes have never happened in the past, and they're happening now, and they are going to happen. They are even going to be worse.
You know, they are going to be worse, but you are the stewards of our environment. You're supposed to be the gatekeepers. You are the Ministry of Environment, of the natural resources. Formerly, a former British Prime Minister, when he came to this country almost 100 years ago, and because he was dazzled by the beauty of our country, he called it the Pearl of Africa. Almost 50 years ago, Uganda was covered by forest. Like, the forest cover was like half. Today, you have, you know, almost overseeing the depletion of the forest cover. It's going before your watch. So one wonders, we have a ministry, we have people who have a doctorate like yours, but the forest cover is on the go. So the question is why?
Well, maybe if I talk about the forest cover, of course, I need to look at what is happening. Earlier on, you mentioned that South Sudan schools have closed because of the heat wave. And obviously, we need to reflect and say why. So what is happening generally is not happening only in Uganda. It's a phenomenon that is happening in the region. The temperatures are going up, and you have realized that the rains have not come. Normally, March to May, that's the rainy season. So the rains have not come. The winds, the cyclones that actually bring rain into our region have actually been diverted around Mozambique. So the rain has not come now. Because the rain has not come, and the temperatures are going up, that's why we're seeing these heat waves. So it's not associated entirely with the tree cover going down now. It's a phenomenon that's happening all around the region. But of course, it is finding us already sick, you know.
There's a Ugandan contribution to the entire global mess.
Yes.
There is our own contribution. We have our own mess.
Yes, indeed.
For example, the way of our livelihood and how we live is not sustainable. Let me give you an example. For every Ugandan who has had supper, if they had supper, maybe 98% or 99% of those Ugandans, that supper must have been prepared either using charcoal or wood.
Indeed.
But if you ask the same people, how many trees have they planted so that they can be able to eat every day, perhaps they tell you none.
Indeed.
So as a people, Dr. Calist, we are in a self-destructive mode. How can we be so unwise?
Well,
for lack of a better word.
I think you are very right. We are really destroying our country, we're destroying our environment. Look at Kampala, for example. We don't have any green cover at all. We are seeing Kampala actually paved. You see buildings, a few areas which were green are now being turned into paved surfaces. And you know, when it shines, and you find surfaces which are made up of concrete, then you are getting heat coming up. So we have a lot of heat coming up. So again, the environmental degradation is partly causing this, and as Ugandans we are destroying the environment, and I agree with you, we are destroying, but we are not actually planting trees. So we need to do a lot as a country. We are not protecting the environment, and the more we destroy the environment, the more we cut the trees, the more the situation is getting worse. And as Ugandans, we need to come to the basics and say, do we continue cutting trees without planting? And I think this is the discussion we're having. But later on, of course, I will highlight what the government is doing through the Ministry of Water and Environment.
You know, just now talking about the Ministry of Water and Environment, and before I come to Crispus, this week you have what you've called the Uganda Water Week.
Yes.
I mean, this is the moment for you to reflect.
Yes.
But then when we see Dr. Calist, also you seem to be organizing with us. Also, you know, you're crying with us, and you're like, no, for you have a docket. For you, you're supposed to be doing more. For you, we expect a lot more.
Yes, indeed, we are doing a lot actually. Right now, we have a program called running out of trees, where we are planting trees massively. We are working with the private sector, we are working with the civil society. Right now we have big programs with the cultural institutions, but obviously the tree cover now has gone up. We are having about 13.4%. It had gone down below 10%. So it is coming up, but it's not yet enough. We need to bring it over 20%. So we are moving, but of course, we are not moving at a speed that we should be moving. And that's why as government, we are trying to mobilize all the stakeholders to ensure that we plant trees. Right now, we are working with the religious institutions to use their land so that we plant. This week, the Anglican Church, the Archbishop of the Anglican Church has actually declared this week a week for environmental protection and restoration.
Let me come to Crispus, because Crispus, I understand you're a climate activist, but also you run something called the Climate Cafe, Kampala Climate Cafe. Exactly what is this? If you can just introduce yourself to us, then we can know how to move, so that Ugandans can know who is speaking to us.
Yes, thank you, Patrick, for having me. My name is Crispus Mwemaho. I am a medical clinician by profession and a health and climate advocate. I also host Kampala Climate Cafe, and this is a platform that unites young people to learn about climate change and share ideas about the solutions, the different solutions that we can undertake to address this global phenomena, and also a platform that unites them to network and foster collaborations and partnerships.
Yes. So young people like you have a more stake in this country, bigger than us, because you're supposed to live even longer in this country than the people than the adults, because that's how it is. Yeah. Do you think you're going to inherit a mess, or you're going to inherit from the older generation? Are you inheriting a mess, or you think you're inheriting something good?
I think from the reality of what is happening, if all goes business as usual, yes, we are inheriting a mess. And obviously, if we put interventions, or our elders who are in these big positions, and I'm not saying the elders only, we have obligation also to do something. But if we work together, then we don't have to inherit a mess, because we also have to reproduce and give a generation to come. So it might not only be about us, but also the people that will give this world to. Yeah. So
yeah, but well, he's not mincing his words, Dr. Calist. Yeah, that you are going to give these young people a mess in terms of environment, and that's a big indictment.
Where indeed,
you're giving
of course,
them a mess. No, you're leaving them in a mess.
No, where I think we don't want to do that, but also want them to come and work with us. Of course, as you realize, Uganda's population now is made up of the young people, and very productive, and that's why we're engaging them very actively to work with us. Of course, we don't want them to inherit a mess, but also we don't want them to pass over the mess to the people that come after them, and that's why we have to work with them so that collectively we can make Uganda a better country to live in.
Let me give you an example of in my own lifetime, I have seen a river disappear. I come from Chenjojo. And when we were growing up and going to school, Chenjojo Primary School, in between my village in Gezi and Chenjojo, there used to be a small stream called River Joka. When you go there right now, the stream is almost no more. Yes. But that could also be the story of every village in Uganda.
Yes.
And that's the story of even a river like River Wizi in Mbarara.
Yes.
Mbarara is perhaps Uganda's second largest city. But that place is so water stressed. River Wizi, that used to feed in Mbarara, has now become a trickle. But that's the same as Aswa, that's the same as Deng, that's the same as River Tangi, that's the same as Impologoma, that's the same as many other rivers.
Yes.
So we are finding ourselves, constrained. And yet we have ourselves to blame, Dr. Calist.
Yes, indeed, we have ourselves to blame. And that's why, as government, as Minister of Water and Environment, we have decided to actually look at all those rivers and we say, where is the water coming from? What is causing these problems, and how can we protect them? we have developed what we call catchment management plans. We have now 32 catchments in the country, and we have developed plans for 22, where we have brought the stakeholders together to identify those challenges, agree on actions together, and ensure that we bring the stakeholder, the people on the ground, actually to be part of finding the solution. River breeze, for example, there's a lot of water in river breeze, but when it rains, the water flushes out. In the rainy season, you have a lot of water causing, resulting in turbidity, but in the rainy season, this water has gone. So what we are trying to do is to make sure that we retain this water in the areas where it comes from. We call them catchments, so that it is available when it is needed. So restoration is the key, and that's why we're restoring wetlands, we're restoring forest cover, river banks, and we want every Ugandan to know that the future lies in restoration.
You don't have to go far to see how human activity is destroying the environment and the water resources. You need to go to as close as Gaba,
yes,
and see the effluent that powers from Kampala city and goes into Gaba, and how around the shores of Lake Victoria, around Gaba, how the water has turned green and ugly and dirty. It's no brainer that the National Water and Sewerage Corporation has had to put a plant of pumping water from as far as Katosi. Why? Because pumping from here, the water is extremely dirty. Yes. And it's business as usual. This is what we are contending. This is what we face.
Yes, indeed, it's a problem, and of course that's why the wetlands which were all around Kampala and Kivubo Channel and all of that, those were the wetlands that were filtering all this wastewater before it goes into Lake Victoria. But many of them were destroyed, many places have been built up, and that's why government has embarked on cancellation of titles. Right now, many titles have been cancelled. The idea is to get those areas to perform their function of filtering the wastewater before it goes to Lake Victoria. And Ugandans may need to know that the cost of water has gone up. Why? Because the cost of treatment is also high. So if we want to continue paying that high amount of money, then of course we are going to suffer as a country. So government is taking action to make sure that those areas where wetlands were destroyed are recovered, and these titles have been cancelled. But of course the speed at which titles are being cancelled has not been as fast as we want because of some legal issues, some people going back to court, and then of course they limit their progress. But the government is taking action in that regard, and Ugandans should worry about that.
Crispus, as young people really, apart from you know, talking about climate change and maybe awareness, what practical and physical things can you do when you are seated in your climate cafe, Kampala, and you're doing awareness campaign? Exactly what is that?
I think a lot can be done by young people, and a lot is being done by young people. First of all, like Doctor mentioned, we are partnering with different government entities to plant trees, but also the issue of awareness is very huge, because if someone is not aware of what they are doing, then we are going to end up having multiple problems like he was mentioning. So I think awareness should be at the core of everything that we are doing, but also as young people they are doing a lot of innovations. We have been at the Water Week, and we are seeing that a lot of young people are doing, for instance, different energy sources which are renewable, charcoal briquettes, and these are things that young people are doing with limited resources and capacity they have. But of course, there are a lot of challenges. For instance, capacity building, we need to be enhanced in terms of the solutions that we want to see that they address the global climate change, and also the big factor of funding. So I think a lot can be done if things like funding and capacity building are put in place or are given to young people. Yeah. You
know, the issue of funding is key. And sometimes I wonder, what are the other sources of funding that you can think of? You know, local innovations. Instead of just looking at the World Bank, you know, IMF and, you know, GIZ and USAID, but, well, those are development partners, they will always help. But we need to find local resources to address local problems, Dr. Tindemugaya.
Yes, indeed. Actually, you are right, Patrick. There's a study that has been done at African-wide level. It's called Water Investment Program study which has identified, has confirmed that actually we have a lot of money even within the country. There are even examples being given. If you look at the money that is held in circles all over the country, that money is substantial. Money held in pension funds, money available generally. So that study indicated that actually countries can mobilize money within the countries. But of course, there has to be transparency, there have to be accountability. For example, if you approach circles and you say, can we put all this money and put it to good use and give you interest? The starting point, they won't say, is our money safe? So money is available in the country and we are trying to explore this. Right now, as Minister of Water and Environment, we have developed a financing strategy for the national water policy. And we have realized that there are a number of innovative financing sources that one can tap into, even within the country. But also, funding doesn't have to be hard cash. You can actually mobilize money through getting things done at minimum cost. For example, we have realized that we are spending a lot of money on awareness raising. If, for example, you go all over the country, you're having workshops, but you can actually reduce substantially that amount of money by working through existing structures. The churches, for example, the churches have a network from the national out to village. The cultural institutions, the Toro Kingdom, the Uganda Kingdom, Soga. So again, we are realizing that resource mobilization is not about finding new money, it's about also trying to do things efficiently. The other thing also which has been found by that study is that we need to start by looking at how we are utilizing available resources. Today, during the Uganda Water and Environment Week, there was a keynote speaker who actually raised issues which are very important. That if you are in an area and you want to provide water to more people, you start by seeing how you are using the water you have. Are you using it efficiently? Otherwise, if you turn your tap on and you let water flow, that water is wasted. But if you use water efficiently, you can actually have water available for more people and save money, and you don't require additional financing. So we are now rethinking the way we are funding the sector, and our financing strategy has actually helped us to identify all possible sources of funds, and we feel we should be able to move forward.
I understand there's money in the bank that people maybe could even take as loans with a lower interest.
Yes.
Do Ugandans know if somebody wants to get into afforestation, for example, that they could find money and then not on a commercial, interest terms?
Yes.
How is that?
Actually, we have also realized that a lot of money is available, but people don't know. We have, for example, been discussing with the DFCU Bank. They have resources that can actually be accessed at a very low interest rate. They are not commercial loans. They are loans that are subsidized, but people don't know. Bank of Uganda has, for example, agricultural loans. How many people even know about that? The Uganda Development Bank has funds. So I think what we need to do as a country is to make sure that Ugandans are aware of available opportunities and take advantage of them. But also, you can actually get co-funding. Government funds a part, and then the private sector funds part. So again, we are going outside the box. We are thinking outside the box. We can no longer continue looking at financing from the traditional sources. We want to look at innovative financing sources, including climate financing.
Crispus, the problems we face today are not only Ugandan made.
Yes.
Some of these are because of the global phenomena. Yeah. And as far as emissions is concerned, Africa emits just little. I'm told around 3 or 4% of the total global emission. But Africa is suffering the impact of these emissions. Yes. So sometimes, do you think the voice of Africa or even the voice of Uganda is not listened or heard when we go to some of these major conferences, like we've just finished COP28 in Dubai?
Yes, to be honest, yes. For instance, I'll give you one case study where countries for so long in the global south have been pushing for loss and damage fund due to losses and damages caused by climate change. But it has taken us years and years for global north countries to accept that they actually they are responsible to pay this fund. So I think, yes, what you're asking is right. Less developed countries need to be heard, because they contribute less to the global climate change. But that, unfortunately, is not the case, as the big cuts in the business are always the ones who are deciding on what the world is taking. Yeah.
You know, I'm sure, Dr. Tindimugaya, you must have gone to all these COPs in Scotland, in Glasgow to COP26, and then in Sharm el-Sheikh, I think was COP27, and then recently in Dubai. And I remember in Glasgow, COP26, I think there was a pledge of $100 billion to help in the, in financing environment-related issues. But that money is pledged, the money never comes.
Yes.
So when you sit in these big conferences, and all these commitments are made, but they are not, they don't walk to the talk, why do we even have to go for this COP?
Well, Patrick, you are very right. Actually, the commitment made in Glasgow has never been realized, and that's the whole purpose of the negotiation. Even in Sharm el-Sheikh, the developing countries were raising the same issue, and of course, during that time, we wanted for the countries to own up. Now, the challenge we are having, again, the developed countries are also really not being honest, not being transparent. Now, they want to count money, for example, which they have given to some NGOs for some activities, they have given to maybe some private company, and for them they want to count that as climate financing. And we are saying climate finance, even when they give us loans, they say, well, we are giving you money for climate finance. So we are saying that money should be grants, because it's money to help us address those challenges. So right now we have been really discussing, even in Dubai, we had the same discussion. So they are not owning up, and that's why the developing countries are really pushing so hard and pushing hard to make sure that the voices are heard. Of course, we have been, as my colleague has talked about, the loss and damage fund. We're pushing to create that fund, but they're refusing to put in money. Even in Dubai, they made pledges, but the issue we're saying, you make a pledge once, but if that money is utilized, what mechanism are you putting in place to continue to replenish that fund? So the discussions continue, and of course that's the heart of negotiations. We are negotiating as Africa, we negotiate as developing countries, and negotiations take years. Those of us who have been part of negotiations, I was part of a negotiation agreement on the Nile, we took over 10 years.
So what kind of climate justice would you want to say?
I think for me, in a global perspective, the kind of climate justice I would want is one which is people-centered. And I mean, those who are responsible for the mess that we are seeing today should own their mess and actually pay for their losses and damages they are causing to us. But also, going down to our countries, I think we need to talk about things of how we prioritize our available monies. So it is not a secret that when a flood comes here or rain comes here, we are affected than how it is in the US. It's because they have good infrastructure that we don't have. Not that we couldn't be having it, but I think our priorities are set different, which actually puts us in vulnerable states, and we end up having a lot of damage.
And Crispus, how do you rate the policies that we have, the Ugandan government policies on environment, on climate, on our water resources?
Wow, that's a very good question. I think on paper, they are very good policies. And we've never questioned this country about how good policies are on paper. But it actually goes beyond that. So we are seeing that most of the times the challenges we are facing is not because we don't have protecting policies, but the implementation is lacking. When you look at the Climate Change Act, things like different policies, they are very good on paper, but when it comes to implementation is where the problems come in.
Let me bring you back to the issue, for example, of afforestation or maybe deforestation, where we have lost it, forest cover. the land tenure system, I suppose, in Uganda is partly the reason why we are losing the forest cover, because largely land is in people's private hands, and they can do as they wish. What do you think could be done if most of the forests that have been cut were formerly on people's private land, and now they want to agriculture or even timber? There's little that you can do. Do you think maybe the trees should be treated differently, or maybe we have to look into again our tenure system?
I think the global climate change is not only a challenge but also an opportunity for us as in a modern day to reform the ways we're living, not only in the land tenure system but also maybe our kind of infrastructure, our kind of education. Is it the one that is actually providing solutions for this? So when you talk about our land tenure system, yes, that is also part of the things that maybe we need to reform and see how we can create an enabling environment where we can protect these trees. Because as Dr. mentioned, we can have a lot of interventions where we are planting trees, but how sure are we that these that we are planting are going to be maintained when the rest of authority is in the hands of
because
the
we should
owners.
move away from, somebody has just said, and I heard it from the Water Week conference, that we should move away from the word of planting into and go into the growing of trees.
Yes.
Because now we just plant and leave, but when you grow, then trees, then you're super focused about them. We seem to have, according to Christmas, again, the policies are good, but, well, on paper, again, that's an indictment on the government that you serve.
Well, Patrick, of course, yeah, you are right. And of course, you know, it is easy to criticize. Yes. And I think it has happened previously where some people have criticized government and then they are put there and then they see what is happening. Indeed, we need to scale up implementation, but also we need to look at the realities of the country. Uganda's population, 2 days ago I was talking to somebody from UBOS. They are having a store at our Ministry of Water and Environment, and she told me that our population is 47%. This is a population that is growing at a very, very high rate, and it's depending on resources that are not increasing. Many of the people don't have jobs. They are depending on the land, and what is happening? They are destroying all over. So we need to look at the realities. If, for example, somebody is dying, you can say, well, government has not enforced the laws, but somebody is going to go in the wetland and the forest, and you say, kill me if you want, because after all, you know I'm dying tomorrow. So we have to face the realities, and I think that's where government is coming in to say, yes, and I think His Excellency, the President, has been saying it. Yes, we can remove the people, but give them alternatives. So our programs now are centered around improving people's livelihoods and giving them alternative income generating activity. And we are seeing results. We are seeing results. We have had a number of wetlands which have been destroyed. For example, in the southwest, around Kigeze, Tungamo areas, Rukiga, Kabale, we had many wetlands that were highly degraded, but they have now been restored, and people are now looking after them, and they are performing the function they are supposed to perform. How did we do it? We now wanted the people to look at the wetland as a resource that can create jobs. So we have now brought people together. We have created them into water and environment cooperatives. Right now we have 15 water and environment cooperatives, some in northern Uganda, some in eastern Uganda, and southwestern Uganda. Now, we get them to restore a wetland. Then, like for example, in one wetland in Tungamo, people have harvesting papyrus. They are selling the papyrus. People have banana plantations, so they are creating jobs. Those who are cutting papyrus, those are jobs. Those who are transporting papyrus, those are jobs. Those who are mulching the banana plantation. So we are creating jobs along the value chain. But people are getting mud fish. They are creating fish ponds around. They are even using areas around the wetland for actually zero grazing goats and cows. And when you go there, you see wetlands that have come up. People are happy. They are richer.
There's been some form of regeneration.
That's the direction we are taking as a country, that you don't just want to evict people. Where will they go? But we now want to look at these resources as sources.
Dr. Tinmuga, you can give me examples from far away, and I want to know their true examples of things that are really happening and nature is regenerating, which is a good thing. But when you look into Kampala, just at the beginning, preparation for NAM, I'm told about 100,000 trees were planted. Some of these are royal palm trees.
Yes.
All the roads of Kampala. But guess what? They are dying, they are being stolen, they are not being cared for, and then you wonder. I mean, here is a good effort. I don't know whether it was a minister or an individual, but a good effort. But after putting them, as if we just planted them for NAM visitors, and when the NAM visitors have gone, the trees, nobody's caring for them. And I drive through and I see sometimes, and I'm wondering, look at the good effort that is about to go to waste as we watch.
And I think, Patrick, that goes back to what you talked about. Is that tree planting or tree growing? So that is tree planting. So we are saying we don't want just plant trees, because if you plant a tree and you leave it there, a tree will not look after itself. It has to be looked after. So the approach of tree growing instead of tree planting will solve that problem. What are we doing? You plant a tree and make sure that you put in place mechanism for making sure that it is maintained. If it is a school, for example, and you plant trees there, then you are making sure that either the pupils or the students or the teachers or the workers are looking after it, and there are mechanisms continuously follow up to ensure that it is done. Where we, for example, plant trees all over the country, we are actually giving people what we call contracts. We say, plant a tree until it has grown, and we give it 2 years. That's when we will consider it to be a tree. And we facilitate you to make sure that it grows. So that's the direction. Otherwise, the trees that have been planted in Kampala, yes, they were ceremonial, because there were no mechanism put in place actually to grow the tree. So we have to change, even as individuals, even in our own gardens. If you plant a tree and you don't look after it, it will dry. So it's not on the streets of Kampala alone. It should also be happening in our
But why can't the ministry, gardens, for the case of Kampala and the trees that have just been planted, jump in and rescue the situation?
Now, this is where, again, of course, the Ministry of Water and Environment doesn't work within Kampala. This is it is under jurisdiction of Kampala Capital City Authority. But again, this is something, again, we need to look into. Who is planting and how is it planted? Does he have even the technical knowledge? Many people think that actually you just put a tree, a seedling in the ground and it looks after itself. So I think these are professionals. We need professionals. We need professional advice. So let people not just plant a tree and think it will grow by itself. So again, that's why we have to rethink the way we are doing things. If the trees are planted and they are dying, do we just want to continue like that? No. Then we are not making a difference. And I think we should be held accountable. Those of us who are doing that and the trees are not growing, we should be held accountable.
So, Chris, but are you inspiring young Ugandans and yourself to get into the mode of planting or growing trees? Because that is needed. And when they are planting trees, what kind of trees? Because when you go to Western Uganda, there has been planting of trees, but a lot of eucalyptus, and I'm told eucalyptus is probably not the kind of species that could help us, they could have wanted, because after all, it has a tendency of, sucking the water out of the ground and could also make the land very dry.
Yeah, in my day-to-day work, I work a lot with people who are doing tree planting, and myself, I also do tree planting and actually tree growing. But I think, like the doctor mentioned, it's more than just planting trees. And with this, we have worked with a partner, Tree Adoption Uganda, which I think they have also worked with the Ministry of Water and Environment, who are having a technology whereby whatever tree you plant, you are able to monitor it using GPS coordinates. So in that, you are able to monitor the tree and help it grow. And I think these are initiatives that we need to scale up to make sure that people do not only plant trees, rather grow them.
Okay, so you're making the planting of trees look a bit cooler and cool and hippie, yeah? So that young people can join. You're talking about having a tree and you have your coordinates and you keep,
yes, because
keep
we are
monitoring it on your phone.
talking about accountability. If, let's say, I'm sitting here and saying I planted 500 trees, let's say last year, where's proof? this gives you accountability, but also a sense of knowing that whatever you've planted, you need to go an extra mile and make sure that it grows into the tree that can actually help us in the carbon sequestration.
So you've told us that the forest cover is getting recovered, and in some forests there's some regeneration. But also, Ugandans have planted more of eucalyptus. What's your take on eucalyptus?
Yes, Patrick, maybe before I talk about eucalyptus, just to maybe get the viewers to appreciate the importance of a tree. And when you talk about tree planting, people may think about tree planting for firewood, for poles, for growing, but in terms of water, water will occur because of the trees. The trees will evaporate, send moisture into the atmosphere. When it reaches the atmosphere, it will cool, and that's the rain we are having. So areas which don't have trees actually turn into deserts. So trees are very, very important in many respects. For us, from the water side, they are the ones which maintain the saturation of water, but also trees are used to suck the gases into atmosphere. So that, again, when we are talking about climate change mitigation, the trees are very important. They suck those greenhouse gases from the atmosphere so that the temperatures go down. So when you see temperatures going up, those are areas where actually we are not sucking the greenhouse gases. So eucalyptus, yes, many people want it because it grows very fast and you can get a lot of money from it. But we don't encourage it because it sucks a lot of water, so we are losing a lot of water, and actually the government has banned eucalyptus. But right now people are making money actually through carbon credits. And that's why I really would want to encourage people to invest in tree growing, because right now, as a ministry, we are developing regulations to regulate how carbon markets are going to be managed, and people will be getting money out of that, in addition to many other benefits through tree planting.
Dr. Kalisti Ndimugaya and Crispus Mwemaho, gentlemen, hold on to your points because you're going to take a break on the spot. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guests tonight are Dr. Kalisti Ndimugaya, Acting Director, Water Resources Management at the Ministry of Water, and Crispus Mwemaho, who is a climate activist and founder Kampala Climate Cafe. And we're discussing the climate issues, environment, and of course, the water resource. Before we took a break, Dr. Ndimugaya, you talked of carbon credits. I don't think many people understand how they can even benefit from carbon credits.
Yes, indeed, actually, it's a new issue, and not many people know. And that's the reason why actually we have not been trading a lot in that. Ideally, when you have a forest, then that forest absorbs the greenhouse gas emissions. So you are supposed to be paid for the greenhouse gas, the amount of greenhouse gas that is absorbed. So many developed countries are using developing countries where we have a big forest cover to help absorb the greenhouse gas emissions, and they pay us. So many people are not aware, and a few companies have actually been trading in that. Now, because of that, government has decided to develop regulations which will set the rules of the game. Right now, people have actually been, somebody comes and say, can I'm trading in carbon credits, I give you an amount, people don't even know how it is computed, people don't even know really whether what they are getting is valuable or worth it. So that's why right now we are developing that framework. It's a new issue, it's a new area, the capacity is limited in the country, and that's why we are taking it up. And we have actually been getting many companies coming, wanting to take our big forests. There's a company which came and promised to actually give us 700 billion US dollars.
No.
And then we say no, because first of all, we're not sure, are we really getting value for money? So right now we are trying to actually put the rules of the game in place, but also build the capacity to be able to compute the credits and be able to sell. So it's a new area. Even within the ministry, the capacity is limited. We are now working with a number of organizations, UNDP and others, to build the capacity in the ministry and help us set the rules of the game and ensure that we have these markets up and running.
Capital credits, and when you hear Dr. Tinubuga talk about it, sounds hippie, sounds cool for the young people. Are they into carbon credits?
I think, like he mentioned, is a new market that as Ugandans, young people, we have limited capacity in it. So we still want more capacity building trainings from both government and civil societies and private sectors, those who are already champions in the game. So I think more we shall see more participation or inclusion of young people when they actually know what the market is.
You know, as a director, water management resource, okay, that one.
Water resources management.
Water resources management.
Yes, yes.
You know, when I look at some rivers, especially in western Uganda and even in areas of Bugisu, I can give an example of River Nyamwamba. You can almost know that every May or thereabout, it's going to flood, to cause chaos, and maybe some local residents in Kasese municipality could die. And yet, we think that's a disaster, and it is something we know that happens yearly. So what is it that we're not doing right?
Thank you very much, Patrick. You have given an example of River Nyamwamba.
Yes.
For your information, River Nyamwamba, nobody died last year. Previous years, people were dying.
Yes.
Last year, nobody died, and we don't expect anybody to die this year. Why? We have done a number of things around River Nyamwamba. River Nyamwamba, of course, the water is coming from Mount Rwenzori, and the water is coming with big chunks of rock, big boulders. Now, when they come with heavy force, and they have been destroying roads, bridges, schools, and hospitals. But the people have been digging very close to the river, and whenever it would rain, many people actually will be caught there. The water comes very fast. You may actually be there without even expecting the water. All of a sudden, you see the water coming. So people have been dying because they have been digging close to the river, but also the schools, the hospitals were not protected. So we have a program which we have been implementing there, where we have, first of all, desilted the river so that the water can start flowing. We remove the boulders, but we have also protected with gabions those locations which use flood around schools, around bridges, around hospitals. But we have also restored.
But you know, some of those gabions are really when nature decides to strike. I have seen River Nyamwamba carrying boulders that are almost half the size of this room.
Yes.
And you wonder what can a gabion do?
Yes.
If when the boulders come from the mountains.
Yes, indeed. And we are actually using a multi-pronged approach. First of all, we are trying to say, what do we do where the water is coming from the boulders? We are putting in measures to reduce the speed at which the water is coming. So we are also protecting the banks as we put, of course, the gabion. The boulders are huge, but we're also getting the youth to actually turn those boulders into products. Right now, if you go to the Ministry of Water and Environment, and Patrick, if you can tomorrow and get time, visit one of the stores, you will see the boulders in Nyamwamba which have been carved into hand wash basins, plates, saucepans, and all of that. And you will see. And the youth right now are engaged in those activities. So again, the issue of livelihood improvement and alternative sources of income has been brought into that. So we have ecosystem restoration, we are protecting the catchment, we are having soil and water conservation measures, we are dredging the river and protecting those areas which are vulnerable to flooding. So we are employing a multi-pronged approach. We are not yet there. We have only recovered 5.4 kilometers out of 22 kilometers, but it has shown promise. We were actually there last month with the minister. The minister was commissioning the project, and if you talk with the people in Kasese, at least they are happy with what is being done. We now want to scale it up and cover the whole area, and we want to do the same to all the rivers in the country.
All the rivers in the country. I was recently I think in Noya, or Amuru, I think, in northern Uganda, and I went to a place where River Aswa meets River Deng, and then they create River Tangi that pours water into the Nile. But you know, in the areas of Noya, and Amuru, if I can remember the sub-county I was, there is a way how, because of how the land is inclined, so it washes off, including the fertility, all goes into the Nile. So there's a need to create, or what they call the riparian buffer.
You're right.
So, and so many parts of northern Uganda. And you wonder, where is the ministry in at least growing a riparian buffer so that water does not pour, and again also you stop the fertility, soil fertility, to just go to get wasted.
Yes, indeed.
Get washed away.
Yeah, yes, that's something actually. And we have a national program, we call it Catchment-Based Integrated Water Resource Management Program. We started in 2010 and we are rolling it out to the whole country. And that program basically is saying we need to look at where the water is coming from, protect it, and ensure that also we protect the buffer zone so that they stop actually the siltation of the water bodies. So we are doing that in various parts of the country, but we have also gone further to say that any water infrastructure project has a requirement, has to protect the area where the water is coming from. And we have said that they have to put up to 3% of their investment to actually do that. So hydropower plants, for example, now, there's no hydropower plant that will actually operate without protecting the area where the water is coming from. And we are having a licensing regime with Electricity Regulatory Authority. We enforce that. Irrigation schemes, if you go to irrigation schemes, many of them really are full of silt. And they're spending a lot of money to the silt irrigation scheme. So that arrangement of water source protection and the 3% contribution is helping us. That it's not only about government, it's also about those who are benefiting from it. But also we are getting also many programs. Right now we have many programs going on, but of course, resources again are limiting factor.
Isn't it painful to see big institutions in Uganda, when you go to their kitchen, they're actually using wood, be it the military in the barracks, or the schools, or the hospitals. And yet, when you have big institutions, a big population staying together, there would be innovation that you could use in clean energy. But that's not the case. You find schools, trucks carrying wood, including sometimes prisons and police and the UPDF. And I'm wondering, I'm told, by the way, there's a joke that chalk on wood is being used even in the highest places. I don't want to mention. But
very interesting. And like he mentioned, I think all these things play along the reality of which our country is in. Are we able to afford clean energy sources? And that is a very big question we should be asking ourselves. Are we not affording because we cannot afford, or maybe there are no interventions put in place to make sure that even if it is a gradual process.
I'm told there's actually been a study that it indicates the cheapest way of cooking is gas,
yes,
followed by electricity, and the most expensive is charcoal.
Yes.
I don't know, but I've heard some, I don't know whether you agree, because somebody has done a study that is cheaper using gas, followed by electricity, and the most expensive is charcoal.
I think for it to be expensive or even cheap, it should play along lines of availability. So we might say that gas is cheap, but is it in our reality, is it accessible to every Ugandan? That's a very big question.
Well, there will be people who can access it, but they will say, no, the food cooked on gas and food, they cannot give me the best matoke, or for me who
maybe
comes from Toro, and I want Kalo and Firinda.
Yes. That's where things like mindset change and awareness comes into play. So I think we also need to do a lot in terms of creating awareness about this. Yes, like you mentioned, I feel like I had some cultures, they don't believe that matoke made from gas is actually real matoke. So there's those cultural notions that are attached to the energy sources that we are using to cook, which I think are not right and should be put to we should find the way how we can advance these new renewable sources of energy and make sure that our people actually embrace them by awareness creation.
So, Dr. Tinimugaya, what can we learn from Ethiopia? Because Ethiopia has started a campaign of growing trees, I'm told 4 billion, and they are super focused on growing trees, and they are getting results. We are in a better position, after all, if we wanted to grow, because our land is not as rugged and dry as some other parts. After all, almost 50% of East Africa's arable land, apart from Congo, is here in Uganda. So we are better placed if we decided to grow trees, to actually nurture them and grow them into maturity than some other countries. What can we learn from Ethiopia? Well,
Patrick, a lot can be learned from Ethiopia, but also we need to look at the land tenure system. Ethiopia, the land belongs to government. Government can actually come and say, declare an area as a tree growing area. If you go to Addis Ababa, I went to Addis Ababa, the first time I went to Addis Ababa was probably in the early 2000s. It was a slum. Most of the places were slum. If you go there now, it's a modern city. Why? Government will decide and tell people you are moving and we are creating a road, we are turning into this. So I think our problem as a country, our land tenure system, and you mentioned that, plays a very, very big role. Which land are we going to plant on? And how are we going to ensure that even we do massive tree planting, the trees will actually survive? We are talking about planting on church land or school land. Church can decide and say we are cutting trees to actually set up another church. Government will not come and stop. So I think our land tenure system is a challenge because most of actually the tree cover is being lost on public land, private land. While public land you can plant and use, but of course some of this land now is not even available. So we can run a lot from Ethiopia, but our land tenure system becomes a limiting factor.
What would you suggest?
Well, as of now, we have been suggesting again something as a compromise. We say, can we, first of all, get people to plant trees around the boundaries so that people don't start saying, oh, our land, we need it for agriculture, but also make tree growing a lucrative business so that people actually encourage to go into it. Again, carbon credits, I think, are also going to give us some probably opportunity.
Okay. You know, I had an opportunity to attend a conference of the Uganda Water Week, and I'm wondering, I see people, experts, people with skills and expertise and you know, big offices, and they come and in an auditorium speak and make a lot of sense. But is there a fear that you could be making sense to yourselves and not those who matter?
Well, Patrick, of course, there is a limit to what you can do. At least you can't stop speaking because you say you are not making sense. Hopefully some people will listen. But of course, we are also working.
Oh, you're making sense, but you're making sense to yourselves.
Yes, but that's why during the Uganda Water and Environment Week, we are engaging different stakeholders. We know there are people who can listen. We engage the churches. Okay. We believe that the voices can be heard. We engage cultural institutions. We engage the academia. There are those we feel their voices can be heard, but of course our voices also can be heard. Let's not just keep quiet, because at the end of the day, if you don't talk, then how will you be known? So we know we still have a big role to play, and maybe the media also can help us also to pass over these messages. But I think Uganda is for all of us, and I feel every Ugandan now is concerned, and we need to come up and all be counted.
Okay, I think in the interest of time, looks like I'm having a technical hitch. I'm not getting the calls coming in. So I'm going to ask you, gentlemen, beginning with you, Crispus, to give me your concluding remark tonight on the show.
My concluding remarks, I think, for us to address this global climate change, we need to work together. It's a multi-sectoral effort for us to combat the effects of climate change. But also I want to applaud what the Minister of Water and Environment is doing. And he mentioned about the catchment management plans. I myself, I work in Kasese with my organization. And last year and this year we haven't had actually the floods. And these are all efforts by the ministry. But also in this year's Water and Environment Week, he was mentioning about inclusion. We had the first youth subcommittee in the organization of this week, where we feel like young people's voices were not heard. But actually, in this week, there are more young people that were brought on board through various activities, and we really want to applaud them and encourage them to continue working with young people, not only young people but everyone, because we need everyone on board to make sure that we address the issue of climate change.
I was amazed actually to meet a young girl, very young, I think 9-year-old. If you can remember Grace Nsima,
yes.
She's such a phenomenal young girl.
Very good.
You can feel how she makes a submission for climate change, for water resources, for our forests as a young child, and how she pushes it in a manner that is very convincing and very captivating and very passionate about it. You can feel there's hope for Uganda. What's going to be your parting shot? Well,
Patrick, I just want really to appeal to Ugandans. First of all, to know that Uganda is our country. We don't have any other country, and the ball is in our court. Let's not lament. I think one step forward is better than no step at all. I think we can make Uganda a better country to live in than it is now. We only need to come out and perform our roles. Government sets the rules of the game, sets the policies. But it's not going to be in your homes to take action. So I really want to appeal to every Ugandan to stop lamenting, stop blaming. The blame games are not going to help. If each one of us can do something, collectively, we'll do a lot. And that's why the theme of the Uganda Water and Environment Week, the 7th Uganda Water and Environment Week, is rethinking collective action. We feel collective action will make a difference, but innovative solutions. We can't continue doing the same things and expect different results. So we want to change the way we are doing things. We think we can innovate, and Ugandans are very intelligent people. World over, you go to international organizations, they are running their affairs. We want to use the knowledge we have, expertise we have, to make Uganda a country we can be proud of. We are tired of comparing Uganda with Rwanda, with other countries. Let's make Uganda a country where we can all be proud of, and people start referring to Uganda and envying Uganda. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Calliste Tindimugaya, Acting Director, Water Resources Management at the Ministry of Water. Thank you, Crispus, for the climate activist and also founder Kampala Climate Cafe. Gentlemen, you've added value to our platform. We thank you for the passion that you have in what you're doing. When you have passion, I think things can always change. And I believe God placed us in the best part of the world. It's true, this is the pearl of Africa, but we need to keep it that way. You need to have traveled across this region, across the globe, and see how uniquely blessed Uganda is. Good night and God bless Uganda.